on this edition of Independent Sources After the Disaster, our special look at the local response to the series of natural disasters that have ravaged the Caribbean and Mexico.
Independent Sources, your window to the city's ethnic and immigrant communities. Here's your host, Garry Pierre-Pierre.
The earthquakes that ripped through Mexico and hurricanes that flattened Dominica, Puerto Rico, and a few other Caribbean islands may have passed. But the recovery effort is a daunting task that experts say will be ongoing for years to come. This week, we'll take a special look at some of the local responses to these disasters. We'll begin with the story of Linda Royale. Royale and her husband, Antonio Ramos, are one of the many Puerto Rican families in the city who may be taking in their relatives who are fleeing from the island. Royale talked to us about the hurricane's effect on her family and what may lie ahead.
He's right now in Cabo Rojo, which is about half an hour to 45 minutes south of Mayagüez, the third largest city in Puerto Rico. And he goes there at least once a year to be with his family and take care of his mom now that she's older. And he had gone down as he does every year, and he happened to leave on August 29th, which is late for him. He usually leaves in June. So he got caught up in Irma and Maria. His mom has a little 7-acre piece of land outside of town, literally 2 minutes. It's across the main highway. And his mom lives at the main road into town. The home isn't damaged. It's really a matter of when their gas will come back, when the lights will come back on, communication, the ability to survive without the things that we become accustomed to as modern humans. So, no, he didn't. I really haven't been able to talk to him, but just briefly. I mean, the first day he called, he made it really quick, and then he called it again later on Monday, I guess it was, and we talked maybe 5 minutes. But I don't even think he's thinking that far ahead yet. He's just trying to get from one day to the next with enough water and enough, well, I guess she's got a gas stove, so they're able to cook if they can get things to cook. But at this point, I'm sure he's just trying to get from one day to the next and clean up and take care of whatever has to be done for the moment. That's life. I mean, if she needs a place to stay, which I doubt that she would leave because all her other children are there, but if she has to, that's what we'd have to do. As far as taking care of her, I mean, unless she needed personal assistance or something that we couldn't give her. I mean, at this point in time, she has her own income. So, I mean, I doubt that it would be a huge burden. You know, she wouldn't be much of a cost, I don't think. So, I mean, sure, it'd be a little more out of our pockets, but I don't think it would be, you know, if it were 2 or 3 people that are young, maybe that would be a problem. But for her, I don't think so. It wouldn't be too bad.
Moments ago, you heard the story of a Puerto Rican family and their concerns about taking in fleeing relatives. Now, we'll turn to the rest of the region. The U.S. Virgin Islands and the small island of Dominica were virtually leveled by Hurricanes Irma and Maria. There's been an effort among the city's Caribbean community to get humanitarian aid to that country, but that's proven more difficult than expected. I spoke with Pastor Guilford Monrose, who is the Director of Faith-Based Initiatives in the Office of the Brooklyn Borough President, about why he thinks there needs to be more of a mainstream effort to get aid to the rest of the Caribbean. So, Pastor Monrose, you have family in St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. Can you tell us what's happening with them, what's going on, and how they're coping, first of all?
So thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your concern for my family and for all the Virgin Islanders were affected by Hurricane Irma and also by Hurricane Maria.
Yes, a lot of people forgot about Irma already.
Yeah. So the Virgin Island was the only islands who was hit twice by 2 Category 5 hurricanes in this season. First by Hurricane Irma, and then secondly by Hurricane Maria. St. Croix was definitely, destroyed by Hurricane Maria, and St. Thomas and St. John by Hurricane Irma. My mom and my family is still down there. I'm very happy to report that my sister and her kids got on a Mercy ship and got out of the island.
Okay.
So
where are they now?
So they went to Florida. We have family members in Florida and also in California. So we're going to split up the family so that the children can at least, have school. But the most important thing is that there's no electricity, right?
Okay. Still?
Still. Well, hopefully we are thinking at least latest by March we should have electricity back up.
By March?
March. And I think that a lot of people has a disconnect to the plight of individuals who are living on the U.S. Virgin Islands.
But let's underscore that. When you say U.S. Virgin Islands, because there's a lot of talk about Puerto Ricans' nationalities and
right.
stuff. So tell us the Virgin Islands are?
Right. So the U.S. Virgin Islands is, U.S. means United States, of course, Virgin Islands, United States of America, Virgin Islands, and of course America bought territories. Puerto Rico, you have Guam, you also have the U.S. Virgin Islands.
So basically they're American citizens.
Well,
there hasn't been much...
they are American citizens.
So,
we are American citizens.
Yes. And what's the response been like? I mean, we hear so much about Puerto Rico and the lack of. Is it similar or different in the Virgin Islands?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when you look at the fact that if you have a city in the 50 states who will say to you that they would not have electricity until next year, I mean, we will be up in arms. So I think that there needs to be a sense of urgency and a sense of compassion to understand that they're not Americans who are stuck on an island somewhere. Mm-hmm. These are American citizens who are born on the island, who are American citizens who they're not stuck there. They are there. That's where they live. That's where we live. And I think that, again, our government has to do more even to get individuals out. Both of our hospitals have been destroyed. And, we need to make sure that we can have the hospitals rebuilt. So there's a lot of big items that we
Are there any
that we need.
Troops, National Guard sent there to help to keep some sort of order from maintaining to maintain the order and giving the help that obviously people need there?
Yeah, I think that that there was some sufficient amount of troops. I know that New York State, the governor had sent about 100 troopers to the Virgin Islands to help with security. Not because the island was unstable. It's just the fact that if everyone's home is destroyed, first responders and police officers have to also tend to their family and to be able to get food to eat, gas lines along. You have food shortage, you have water shortage. So you need to bring in other resources to take the burden off of the locals who have to also take care of themselves.
Sure. And so what is the staging ground like? I mean, how has this been coordinated? Since presumably most of the island has been destroyed or non-functional. So how is it actually happening?
The beauty is that there's always packets of resistance for the wind, right? There's always like this one particular house that's standing.
That's true.
Or this one particular area is intact. And so what has happened is that the first responders are being housed on a ship so that there is no need for them to take up, valuable housing space on the island. So first responders are definitely on cruise ships, and so therefore they're living off of the ship that is docked on the port.
Mm-hmm. And so locally, like you're saying, the first responders, the challenge that they're facing, give us a sense of what it's like, because a lot of people who have never experienced these sorts of natural disasters have no idea about the difficulties and the way your lives have been upended and turned topsy-turvy.
Think about not having Facebook for 20 days.
Well, that's not a bad thing.
Think about not having the iPhone. Think about not having So I got a call from a young lady. I run a program every Tuesday night and just giving the people a sense of hope from New York City being patched into the Virgin Islands. And this one lady called me and she said that she have not had a cup of tea since September the 6th. Mm-hmm. And so think about that. I mean, just a small thing of not being able to heat something up is definitely, something so big. So think about not having your necessities, running water, electricity, hot food, hot tea, and ice.
Hot shower.
a hot shower. Oh my goodness, you know how a hot shower would feel.
So there's so much to talk about, but I want to touch upon Dominica, which is totally wiped out. What's happening? There is not such a large Dominican community in New York, but I know that the borough president's office has been involved in trying to help there. What's going on? Can you tell us what the city and others are doing in helping Dominica?
So Dominica has been, for the better word, has been decimated. We're talking about the whole country that the infrastructure has been damaged. I want to tell you that it is bad in Dominica. It's really difficult. So what we have been doing right now, we have a team of 40 individuals led from Brooklyn, medical doctors who are actually on the way to Dominica now. They should be there right now. So we have helped coordinate volunteers from the New York City area who landed on the island of St. Lucia. And we had a team who was on St. Lucia making sure that they have the transportation, that they have food, and making sure that we house them as a transition point to get to Dominica. So we have been working hand in hand with the team who's leading the efforts right now on the ground.
You know, Dominica is where Pirates of the Caribbean movies are shot, and it's a beautiful scene.
I wonder how much money they made off that movie. They need to donate something.
Well, perhaps they are. We don't know that. But it was lush, just absolutely beautiful. And now it's nothing but brown.
So I don't know if people understand what happens during a hurricane, 150 miles per hour wind. You lose all your greenery. So I was trying to explain to people is that the people can't live off of the ground and all the fruits that they have because they're gone. So what is important is water and food getting into those parts of the country so that they could have some type of stability going on.
So locally, what are we doing to help outside of the government sector? Obviously, there's more they could do to provide infrastructure and large logistical things, but in terms of raising money, raising food stuff?
I think, too, the other problem that we are facing, to tell the truth, is that people are paralyzed just by giving because, number one, it's a lot of islands. So some people say, well, if you're collecting stuff for U.S. Virgin Islands, well, what about Antigua? Well, what about Puerto Rico? And then if you give to Puerto Rico, they say, well, what about Dominica? So people are paralyzed in giving. And so that's one problem that we have in New York City. The second issue is that there is so many different groups that's out there that people are saying that they need to be vetted and they need to be and they need to trust them. So then you have a lack of just people wanting to give. And then so people just will definitely go back to the regular. They will say, well, you know, give to the Red Cross, we're going to give to the big United Ways. But not finding and doing the time. They don't have the time to kind of research some of the smaller organizations who's doing great things on the ground. Sure. So if
is there something that the city or the borough?
Yeah, so definitely Borough Hall, you know, my local church, local people have been working together with our borough to collect supplies and items. Basically, what is needed is bug repellent. That is the number one requested thing right now, is bug repellent.
Yeah, because it's hot. And
it's hot. There's mosquitoes.
A lot of water, that's stagnant water.
And then you don't want diseases. And so just basic things like that. So I think to get supplies and support for the USVI and also for Dominica has been slowed because of those multiple of things that I've been saying, and also because too we have a large Puerto Rican representation in New York City. Sure. A lot of the attention and direction is going there, and by right, there should be help as well.
But the other side of this is that we're anticipating lots of residents from the islands to move to New York to join relatives. Right. What is the city doing to absorb these new people? We know will be coming.
There was some conversation about now trying to find ways to have like these welcome centers, quote unquote, to kind of pair people with family members. But I think that, you know, they're American citizens, so anyone can leave St. Thomas, St. Croix, St. John, anyone can leave Puerto Rico, and they can come and then they can join the family. I don't think that there needs to be any type of special. They're not, you know, foreign citizens coming in.
So once again, people don't have to panic thinking that a bunch of illegal immigrants are coming.
You don't have to worry. They're Americans. We might sound different, but yes, they're Americans who needs to come to see the family, yes.
No. And seriously, the schools, school officials getting more resources to accommodate these students.
So another thing that people don't realize is that schools are used for shelters. And if people have no place to go, you can't open up schools. It's a trickle-down effect. And so when we talk about help, we're not just talking about government help. We're talking about professionals who can also come in and deal with the trauma of young people. We're talking about professionals, teachers who can come in and also help and assist, maybe teach for 1 year, maybe for a couple of months to help put schools together. There needs to be makeshift schools. So schools are going to be early in the morning, and then they'll have a second session where another school will come in the afternoon and go from the afternoon into the evening. So we want to make sure that everyone who's in 12th grade, who is a senior in high school, have the opportunity to be on schedule to graduate and to go on to college.
The Caribbean islands, the Lesser Antilles, there's not much reported on them. Do you think if there was more coverage, there would have been more aid, people would have known about the urgency and then hopefully turn things around quicker than 3 or 4 months to get electricity?
Yeah, I think so. We're in a tough position, my friend. I can only hope and pray for compassion of the world, to understand that as Americans we can do more than one thing at a time. We can take care of Puerto Rico, and it's 3.5 million people, and we can still take care of the U.S. Virgin Islands with 100,000 people. We can still have compassion for Dominica and the British Virgin Islands. We are the greatest country in the world.
All right.
So small islands, just 1 mile wide, 16 miles long, we can cover those things. And I think it takes the passion and the guts to help out.
Spoken like a true man of the church. Pastor Monroe, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
When we come back, redoubling the effort to send humanitarian aid to Mexico after 2 massive earthquakes. Finally from us, a group of Mexican-born businessmen are staging a massive effort to send humanitarian aid to the cities affected by the 2 earthquakes that devastated their home country. They call themselves Redoblando Esfuerzos para Mexico, which loosely translates into redoubling the efforts for Mexico. Zyphus Lebrun tells us more.
This supermarket, El Mercado de la Ocho in Passaic, New Jersey, is the staging ground for one of the biggest humanitarian aid efforts to Mexico in the tri-state area. Pedro Matar and one of his partners, Agustin Aguirre, began the effort after the first quake hit Oaxaca on September 7th.
I'm here almost 30 years ago, so I know what's the situation in Mexico. That's why 100% I say, Pedro, I had to do something to my people.
We decided to put a sign in the supermarket, considering that the Passaic is the city with the most concentrations of Mexicans in the northeast area. Once we put that pallet, the goods start to come in the next day, this very next day, and within 10 days, we gather almost 10 tons of help.
Those 10 tons of goods include medical supplies and canned foods, scrawled with messages for the victims of the quake, such as, "Have hope," and courage. Today, these volunteers from the Mexican consulate are carefully sorting and cataloging these goods to ensure that their transactions remain completely transparent.
We want to be, as much as we can, very clear on what we're sending. That's why we're doing, all these people that you're seeing right now, they're doing a list of each of the product that we are sending to Mexico. So, because it's our responsibility that each person that comes in and brings a can of beans, we want to show him, we want to prove him that $1 or whatever he spent for it is going to be delivered to the ones that really need it.
One of today's volunteers, Gabriela Perez, has been helping since the first day. She's from Oaxaca and is concerned that mosquito-borne diseases may be on the rise as her city lays in ruin. She's taken a special interest in sorting the medical supplies.
I know the needs because I born there, and I know it's a disaster. Everybody loses his houses. I'm responsible of the health department. I'm social worker. This is my major. So I take care, everything is fine, nothing is expired, and I divide, for example, alcohol, water, bandage, bandage, everything divide.
This sorting is just one of the legs of a very intricate process that begins with the goods arrival at the loading dock in the back of the supermarket.
Okay, so this is where all the help is loaded. This is where the trucks and the minivans and all the goods that the community, Mexican, Colombian, Peruvian, all Latin American community and American, they come here, they deliver the goods right here.
And continues through the bowels of the building.
Once they get here, we put them in this area. As you can see, these still have to be separated, and they have to be put in each of the section of each of the goods that are needed, because as you can see, there's many products in each of the pallet so once we put them here, we take them to the area of inventory and qualification of each of the goods that we received.
Okay.
So once we unload it and we put them in there, this is where we store it before they go to inventory. Okay. This is where all the pallets that needs to be inventory by the voluntary work. And as you can see, we really need some help in order to organize it, because everything has to be sent.
And I noticed you guys have these over here, a lot of these tents, right?
This is the real need of the disaster, the earthquake that hit Mexico, the house tents, because we're talking about more than 10,000 families that are homeless, that are sleeping on the street. So the house tents that we've already sent, like more than 400, we still need as many as we can get.
And there's these individual ones,
there's the small ones for 2 to 3, and there is these big ones for a big family, for big families. And this is the urgent need that we're sending, that we're giving priority to send via Aeromexico.
Aeromexico and Delta Airlines have been major partners in this initiative, providing free airlift for the pallets. The Mexican government has also been a big part of the effort.
At the beginning, we had this a bit of a process to liberate all the goods that we were sending. But after we had the visit of the Ministry of Foreign Relations into this same warehouse, we had the chance to talk to the President of Mexico, and right now all the humanitarian help sent from the United States, from this area and from all over the United States via Aeromexico, via airplane, we have a sticker that the consulate issued in order for all the humanitarian help is not stopped or delayed at the airports, in customs, so it can be transported immediately to all the states that are affected by the earthquake.
They've received several donations of water that Matar says, because of weight constraints, can't be sent to Mexico, and hence will be sent to hurricane-stricken areas in Texas. When I asked him if this effort would continue, he had this to say.
The need's still there. There are many families without a home right now. So as long as there's still one person sleeping without a roof, as long as there is one person sleeping on the street or without a blanket, our duty is to continue until this is resolved.
Zyphus Lebron, Independent Sources.
That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned. Till next time, be independent-minded.